Warm welcome to Disky Talk with Luyolo. If you're tuning in for the very first time, I do ask that you please subscribe and hit that notification bell. If you've been a part of this journey, I hope you thoroughly enjoy this episode. So, on today's episode, I discuss all things CAF Champions League second leg quarterfinal as I have a look at Mamelodi Sundowns versus CR Belouizdad. So when you have a look at it, then the blue team will represent Mamelodi Sundowns and then the red team will represent Belouzidad. So the last time out then, within the first leg, when Mamelodi Sundowns played against Belouizdad away from home, they did win 4-1. So it was quite the emphatic victory, and Sundowns were very dominant within that game. I do think that within that game, they actually could have won that game by at least 6 or 7 goals because of how dominant they were and how many chances they created as well. When you have a look at them then, what stood out for me with Mamelodi Sundowns on the day then was their pressing. I think they pressed very well, and they also then were able then to create a lot of chances just from combination plays like they usually would, but their pressing on the day was a lot more intensified, and even then their shape without the ball from a defensive perspective was very, very organized and very compact, making it then very difficult for Belouizidad to break them down. So coming up then into this encounter, I do think that Mamelodi Sundowns then coming up in this encounter, it is just for formalities, and the most important aspect becomes just managing the game and seeing it out, as I do think then that they already do have one foot then into the semi-finals. However, let's have a look then at the tactical pre-match analysis. So when you have a look at Mamelodi Sundowns then, they do line up in their 4-4-2 diamond. In goals then, they do start with Ronan Williams. At left back, they do start with Aubrey Mudiba. The last time out, they started with Batuel as the left-sided centre-back. As the right-sided centre-back, they started with Iwuala. And then at right-back, they did start with Khuliso Mudau. Moving on then, right along within the heart of midfield, they started with Mokoena. They started with Mbule. They had Mayema, Zwane at the top of the diamond, and then they started with Shalulile, and then Murena started up front. So when you have a look at Sundowns then with regards to what do they look to do in build-up phase. So in build-up phase then, what you would see then from this Mamelodi Sundowns side then is they look then to institute deep build-up. So what you often then see from this Mamelodi Sundowns with regards to how they look to build up, they normally would be looking to build up very deep, and what you would see then is that Mudiba would invert and he would offer that extra layer within build-up phase. So that's what you'd see a lot of the times. So you would see the left-sided centre-back, the last time out being Batuel, looking to pass to Ronan Williams, and then they'd look to facilitate build-up. However, against Belouizdad away from home, they did change then their build-up scheme. So there was a variation to this because they weren't always then looking to build up through the central areas with short passes, but what they did do then is that Batuel would play the ball into Ronan Williams, and then Ronan Williams would either go long, looking then for one of the number 8s, or then looking for Murena or Shalulile, or he'd look to go into the wide area, into Mudau, and then they'd look to facilitate build-up from there. Because then the way that Belouizdad pressed them, Belouizdad decided then to press with 3-man. So this is how Belouizdad looked to press. So then it was sort of 3 with regards to the winger being there. Then you have Wamba who was there, and then you have Iwuala who was there. So it was then sort of a three-man press up from this Belouizdad side with regards to how they were looking to press Mamelodi Sundowns. So then they look to alter then their build-up scheme. So they look to go long and then look to play off the second ball if it was in the central areas, or they look to facilitate their build-up within the wide areas where they'd look to hit the fullback, and then they'd look to progress play from there. That's what Mamelodi Sundowns did with regards to their build-up scheme. They did alter it. Going into this game, I do think that they might tweak it, and you would see them then looking then to build up through the center like how they normally would. But considering then that they are quite the tactically flexible side and they're very dynamic in possession, I do think that there will be variations to that. So when there are moments where they can build up through the center, then you will see them looking then to facilitate through the center, where Mudiba would be looking to get onto the ball as a first receiver, or Mokoena as well, as opposed to them when against Belouizdad away from home, they often went long a lot of the times. When you move on then right along with regards to Mamelodi Sundowns further up the pitch in possession, So what we did see then from Mamelodi Sundowns was, I would say, a much more conservative approach with regards to the fullbacks. So what you did see then within this game is that Modiba wasn't inverting a lot of the times. A lot of the times what you would see is that ball side, when Modiba had the ball, he'd be looking then to offer the width, and then let's just push those players up just to show you the shape that you would see then from this Mamelodi Sundowns side when they were then in possession. So in possession of the ball, what you did see then from this Mamelodi Sundowns side then was sort of this shape where then it became a 2-3-5. So what you would see then is that the far side fullback in Mudau, he'd be looking then to invert and tuck in whenever then Modiba had the ball within that left wide channel. And a lot of the times then Modiba would be in that left wide channel. And even then Shalulile's goal does come from a Modiba cross. That is the second phase from a corner kick. So this is how Sundowns then were looking with regards to their offensive scheme within the opposition half. On the right hand side, when Mudau offered the width, what you would see is Modiba looking to come in. So that's what you saw then from this Mamelodi Sundowns side. So you'd have those players there committed there. So that's what you saw then from them with regards to then anticipating and being able to prepare then for those offensive transitions and ensuring then that Belouizdad couldn't then hit them then with those counter attacks. But when you then have a look at Mamelodi Sundowns with regards to their pressing, how do they look to press? So with this Mamelodi Sundowns side then, they do look to press within their 4-4-2 diamond, but how do they do that? So how they do that then, let's just open up the opposition. With Belouizdad, they were also looking to build up from deep, but they didn't have much success on the day due to how Mamelodi Sundowns press. So when you look at it then, you'd have your 8 there. Let's just push those players there. So what you did have then from Mamelodi Sundowns with regards to how then they were looking to press. So when you look at this Mamelodi Sundowns side with regards to their press, you'd have Shalulile there, you'd have Murana there, and then you'd have Tembazwane, who would be on the pivot. He would mostly be on Rabai, who plays then as the pivot for this Belouizdad side. So this is how then they were looking to press. And what became key then whenever the ball did go into the wide areas, into the fullbacks, was the 8s. The 8s then being ready to jump and looking then to combat that situation within the wide areas. This is what Mamelodi Sundowns looked to press like. They were very aggressive in their press, and they pressed very well. Without the ball then, when they were then within their mid-block, what they did then is they went then to a 4-3-1-2. So what it did look like then, a very compact 4-3-1-2. So this is what then you saw from this Mamelodi Sundowns side without the ball with regards to what then they were trying to do and ensure then that this Belouizdad side couldn't play through them and that this Belouizdad side then couldn't then gain that momentum. This is the shape that Mamelodi Sundowns would go to, and they'd be very compact in this regard. Whenever the ball would go into the wide areas, then the 8s then were always key to ensure that they could assist with those wide overloads. Sometimes what you would see then is even Shalulile having to drop back. On the right hand side, you'd also see Murena having to also combat that situation. So going into this encounter, this is what you can expect from Mamelodi Sundowns without the ball with regards to their shape when they don't have the ball, and also when you have a look at their defensive scheme. However, a weakness then for this Mamelodi Sundowns side then has been wide penetration, crosses and set pieces. That is an area where they struggle. So whenever a team is able to successfully overload the wide areas, that is where then they do tend to find joy, and they're able to play those crosses, and they look quite vulnerable then when it does come then to those set pieces. However, when you have a look at Mamelodi Sundowns being 4 goals up, I do think that coming up into this encounter, the key aspect becomes game management with regards to how do they look to keep the ball. And also when you've come to know Mamelodi Sundowns and Coach Rulani, they're a side then that always look to play on the front foot. So even in this game against Belouizdad, as much as they'll be looking to manage the game and ensure that they are very organized from a tactical and defensive perspective with regards to not conceding goals, but I do think we'll see another entertaining encounter where Mamelodi Sundowns will look then to go all out and further ensure then that they score a lot more goals against this Belouizdad side. So that is Mamelodi Sundowns then with regards to in possession, out of possession, their build-up scheme, their pressing scheme as well. What do they look like without the ball? Coming up then into this encounter, I do foresee Shalulile being quite the key player, as I think that He had quite a good performance then against Belouizdad, and I do think that he should have scored a lot more goals within the first leg, but I think this is an encounter then where he will have that opportunity, and I think then he really does give that Belouizdad defense a lot of trouble. And within the heart of midfield then, Sipho Mbule is also another player who had a very good performance against Belouizdad away from home. It will be interesting to see if does he retain his position within the midfield, or would we see then Kulisi coming into that position. However, that is Mamelodi Sundowns then within their 4-4-2 diamond. Moving on then right along, let's have a look at Belouizdad. So when you have a look at this Belouizdad side, they line up then with a 4-3-3. So when you have a look at it then, in goals, they do start with Genduz. At right back, they did start with Belkatir, but there is also Bugera, who's also then an equally good right back, very good going forward. And then as the right side at centre back, they started with Kedad. As the left side at centre back, they started with Buchar, who is their captain as well. At left back, they started with Laufi, and then as the pivot, Rabai. As the 2-8s, you have Drawi, and then you also have Buras. And then off the right-hand side, they started with Belkir. Up front, they started with Wamba. And then off the left-hand side, they started with Iwuala. So when you have a look at this Belouizdad side, they are a team then that is also looking to build up from deep. So what you would see from them then with regards to their build-up is that the 8s would often be high up within the two half spaces. And then you'd have the two fullbacks sitting deep and wide, and then you'd have the centre back sort of stationed there, and then you'd have your pivot there. So it does then become a 2-3 build-up with those two centre backs, the two fullbacks within those deep wide areas looking to facilitate build-up. So that is how then they would be looking to build up. But they were not quite successful then with regards to their build-up scheme because of how Mamelodi Sundowns looked to press them. A lot of the times then they forced them long and they couldn't build up seamlessly. So what you did start to see then is that one of the 8s then would look to drop. So sometimes it would be Trawi looking then to drop and sort of facilitate a double pivot to ensure that they could look to build up in that area. Further up the pitch, what does this Belouizdad side look like? So when you have a look at Belouizdad and what they end up looking like. So with Belouizdad, what you will see with them then, let's just push those up. So very similar then to Mamelodi Sundowns with regards to the relationship between the fullbacks. So for example, if the ball side fullback has the ball and is keeping the width for this side, what you do see then is that the far side fullback would be looking to tuck in. So then you do end up seeing somewhat of this 3-2-5 shape, and then on the left hand side it would be very similar. When you do have a look at this Belouizdad side then with regards to how then they would be looking to press, they look to press with a 3-man press. So what that looks like then is let's just do that and open Sundowns up. So when they look to press with the 3-man press. So that is what they would look like with regards to looking to press. They look like that with regards to their pressing scheme and how then they would be looking to press this Mamelodi Sundowns side. With regards then to Belouizdad and what their strengths are with regards to their threats. So when you have a look at this Belouizdad side then, when it comes to set pieces, I would say that they had quite a number of balls that were whipped into the box from corner kicks or from free kicks, which looked to threaten this Mamelodi Sundowns side. As a result of that, that's how their goal came. And Iwuala then is their key man with regards to his speed and skill, because then he was able to, on a couple of occasions, then be able to, from the wide area, penetrate and then deliver across into the box. So when you have a look at this Belouizdad side then, also with regards to the relationship between the winger and the fullback, what you do see is that then the winger and the fullback often have this very dynamic relationship where if the winger then does look to occupy that half space, the fullback is very quick to support and bomb forward. So the fullbacks then are very aggressive with regards to the supporting runs that they do make then for their wingers. So that is Belouizdad then with regards to what they look like then in possession and who their key player is and their strength as well. Without the ball, what do they look like? So without the ball, this Belouizdad side then do tend to sit deep. So it does become somewhat of a 4-1-4-1 shape. And at times it can also then become a 4-5-1 whenever then the wingers do look to tuck in. But when you look at this Belouizdad side then, I would say then that they really struggled against Mamelodi Sundowns, and coming up into this encounter, I don't see them then turning around the tie. I do think that Mamelodi Sundowns then will be in the semi-finals of the CAF Champions League. But it's going to be a very interesting encounter, especially when you look at Belouzidad. How do they approach this game? Because if they open up too quick, too soon, then you could very well see Sundowns then scoring multiple goals like they did within the first half. So I do foresee Mamelodi Sundowns then advancing to the CAF Champions League semi-finals against this Belouzidad side. And I just do think that Belouizdad will struggle, especially then when you consider the intensity of the press when it comes to Mamelodi Sundowns, and also the conditions as well, especially considering then that they will be playing against Sundowns. Kickoff will be at 2 o'clock at Loftus. So I just think that this Belouizdad will struggle, in as much as they do have a couple of very good players. Like I did mention, Iwuala, who's a very exciting prospect, but I just don't foresee it being enough. And I do foresee Mamelodi Sundowns scoring a lot more goals in this encounter. However, at home, do let me know, what do you make then of Mamelodi Sundowns' exploits within the CAF Champions League? What do you make of this second leg encounter? And how far do you think Mamelodi Sundowns can go? Do you guys think that they can go on all the way within the final and eventually win the CAF Champions League? Thank you very much for tuning in to yet another special episode of Diski Talk with Luyolo. Signing out.